The hall was alive with color and sound, filled with strange beings from across the galaxy. Towering figures with glowing eyes, creatures with crystal skin, and others with wings or metal limbs, all gathered under the shining ceiling of the Galactic Council. At the center of the hall stood one single human soldier, still and calm, his black uniform almost blending into the shadow of the marble floor. The council chamber had never been silent when humans were present, but today the silence before the storm carried something different, something heavy. The alien commander, a tall reptilian creature covered in gold armor, stepped forward. His voice carried arrogance and pride as he looked down at the human. "Tell me, Deathworlder," he said, his forked tongue flicking with each word, "do you really think your kind belongs here among the civilized species?" The room echoed with laughter. Dozens of alien delegates joined in, their amusement sharp like blades. Cameras floated around, recording every second for the galactic news networks. The human didn't answer. He stood perfectly still, hands at his side, his brown eyes calm yet unreadable. That silence seemed to anger the alien commander. "Speak when your superior addresses you," he shouted, stepping closer. But the human still didn't move. The alien sneered. "You humans pretend to have honor, but inside, you are nothing but beasts from a violent world." The laughter grew louder, echoing off the glass walls. The human's jaw tightened slightly, a small movement almost invisible to anyone watching. It wasn't fear, it was control. The commander's pride flared. "Beasts must be taught manners," he said in a mocking tone, raising his clawed hand. The moment froze in time. The cameras zoomed in. Delegates leaned forward. Then came the sound, a sharp, echoing crack that cut through the hall like lightning splitting the sky. The alien's palm had struck the human's face with full force. The sound bounced off every wall, turning the laughter into uneasy silence. The human didn't move. Not even an inch. His head turned slightly from the impact, but when his eyes came back, they were not the same. They were cold, empty, focused. The air seemed to thicken, heavy enough to choke on. The alien commander expected rage, a fight, a response. But none came. The human simply stood there, breathing slow, steady, like a machine calculating. Cameras captured the moment in every detail. The mark on his cheek, the glint in his eyes, the motionless soldiers watching from the shadows near the back. The alien commander gave a short laugh, uncertain, trying to regain control of the scene. "See," he barked. "Even Deathworlders can be tamed." But no one laughed this time. The human slowly lifted his hand to his face and touched the place where he had been hit. His fingers came away clean, no blood. Just a faint red mark that faded as fast as it appeared. Then, he looked directly at the commander again. That stare was silent, yet it carried a message everyone could feel but no one could understand. A low hum filled the hall as cameras transmitted the footage to every corner of the galaxy. Millions of viewers watched live, the slap of arrogance, the stillness of a human. The alien commander, now uncomfortable, took a step back. Something in that silence unnerved him. It was the kind of quiet that came before disaster, the kind of stillness before an avalanche. "Say something," he hissed, trying to sound brave. The human finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, he pressed a small button on the silver band wrapped around his wrist. A tiny green light blinked once, then went dark. He said nothing, only whispered words too soft for the microphones to catch. The alien frowned. "What did you say?" The human didn't answer. Instead, he turned and began to walk toward the exit of the council chamber. The guards didn't stop him. Even the commander didn't dare move. Every step the human took echoed through the hall, slow, steady, and unnervingly calm. When the doors closed behind him, the alien commander let out a forced laugh, trying to save his pride. "See," he said loudly, "they know their place." But his voice cracked at the end, and no one laughed this time. Somewhere deep within the galactic networks, the video replayed again and again, the sound of that slap becoming a storm. And far away, across the stars, human warships began to receive a silent signal. On every Deathworlder base, alarms turned red. The message carried just one word: prepare. The alien commander, still unaware, smiled at the cameras, not realizing that in the next few hours, his name would vanish from history, his image remembered only for the 5 seconds before his head rolled across the council floor. The slap was meant to humiliate one human. Instead, it awakened all of them. The alien commander stood in the center of the hall, still laughing, though the sound trembled in his throat. He tried to act like nothing had changed, but deep down, he felt something strange, like the air itself had become heavier. Around him, the other alien delegates whispered among themselves, their voices low and uncertain. The slap that once seemed like a display of dominance now felt like a mistake that would not stay silent for long. Cameras still hovered in the air, recording everything from every angle. The footage was already being streamed across the galaxy. Billions of beings were watching, some laughing, some confused, and a few silent with fear. Everyone had seen the human's expression, the calmness, the control, the eyes that looked like they had seen the end of worlds. The alien commander turned toward the council leader, forcing a grin. "You see," he said, "humans are nothing but primitive creatures. They know when to bow." His words sounded strong, but his voice carried a faint tremor. The council leader didn't reply. She had seen many wars, and she had seen that look before, the look that comes before something irreversible. Outside the grand hall, the human soldier walked through the shining corridors of the council's capital, his boots echoing softly on the crystal floor. Every guard who saw him moved aside without being told. His face was unreadable. He didn't walk fast or slow, just steady, as if he already knew what must happen. He entered a small, quiet chamber, where a holographic console awaited him. Without hesitation, he raised his wrist device and connected it. A glowing blue screen appeared, and a soft voice greeted him. Identity confirmed. Rank: Earth Defense Operative. The human spoke in a calm tone. Authorization code Delta Prime 7. Initiate Omega Protocol. The system paused for a moment, then replied, "Protocol confirmed. Command authorization verified. Awaiting your next command." He stared at the screen for a second, thinking about what had just happened. Then, without emotion, he said one word: execute. Back in the grand hall, a strange silence fell. The alien commander had been giving interviews to the press drones, laughing, pretending to be proud of what he'd done. But suddenly, all the lights in the hall flickered. The massive digital displays froze mid-frame. The commander frowned and looked around. "What is this?" he barked. The council technicians scrambled to fix the systems, but one of them gasped as the main screen changed on its own. The image of the alien commander slapping the human replayed again. Only this time the scene slowed down, zooming in on his arrogant smile. Then the image changed, to a live feed of something approaching from deep space. In a command center orbiting the edge of the galaxy, sensors began to scream warnings. Dozens of unidentified ships had appeared near the outer trade routes, massive, dark, and silent. They didn't respond to hails or signals. The operators zoomed in on one of them and froze. The hulls were black as night, marked with the old Earth symbol, a white circle enclosing a blue flame. One of the operators whispered in horror, "Those are Deathworlder ships." Another voice answered, shaking, but they were decommissioned centuries ago. The radar screens started filling with more and more contacts until the system crashed under the data flood. The feed in the council chamber changed again, now showing a fleet forming in the darkness of space. The alien commander stared at it in disbelief. "This must be a bluff," he said, but even he didn't believe it. The council leader stood, her voice calm but cold. "Commander, what exactly did you do?" He tried to laugh again but couldn't. "I just reminded them of their place," he said weakly. The leader looked directly at him. "No, you reminded them who they are." Meanwhile, across the stars, the reaction had already begun. On Earth's moon base, massive hangar doors opened one after another. Long-forgotten ships, sleek, silent, terrifying, rose from the shadows. On Mars, soldiers stood in formation as the red sky darkened with the shadow of moving carriers. Every human colony received the same signal from the Earth Command. 3 words appeared on every screen, every helmet, every console: prepare for response. Inside the council hall, panic began to spread. News channels started broadcasting emergency alerts. Multiple Deathworlder fleets detected near council territories. One reporter said, her voice shaking, "The human command has gone silent. All diplomatic channels are closed." Delegates shouted, demanding answers, while the alien commander stood frozen, sweat dripping down his scales. One of his aides whispered, "Sir, they're saying the human you struck was a diplomatic envoy, a decorated war hero, one of the few authorized for Omega Code access." The commander turned pale. His arrogance vanished completely. "No," he muttered. He couldn't have had clearance. But deep inside, he knew it was true. He had not slapped a simple soldier. He had struck the spark that could burn the galaxy. The feed changed again, showing the Black Fleet slowly approaching the outer colonies. Every ship's engines glowed blue with controlled fury. The council guards surrounded the alien commander, no longer protecting him but watching him in silence. The council leader whispered to her assistant, "Send a message to Earth. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." But the assistant replied, Earth has blocked all communication lines. They are not answering." In the distance, alarms rang through the capital city as the sky outside began to shimmer. Thousands ran to the observation decks as a bright light filled the heavens. Dozens of small, black vessels were entering orbit, moving in perfect formation. Their silent presence was more terrifying than any weapon. The alien commander fell to his knees, realizing that the galaxy had changed forever. The slap meant to insult a single human had just awoken an entire species. And the universe, for the first time in history, began to regret ever calling humans Deathworlders. Across the galaxy, screens flickered with the same image, the alien commander's hand striking the human soldier. The moment replayed endlessly, analyzed frame by newscasters, military strategists, and ordinary citizens. Some laughed, calling it justice for the savage Deathworlders. Others watched in silence, feeling something far darker in that human's eyes. The slap had not been met with rage or fear. It had been met with stillness, and that terrified those who understood what humans were capable of. On Earth's moon base, Commander Riven sat alone in a steel room, the video playing before him. The light from the screen flickered across his face as his jaw tightened. Behind him stood a dozen officers, silent and waiting. "He didn't flinch," Riven said quietly. "Not even a blink. That means he's ready." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, we've received confirmation. The Omega Protocol has been activated." Riven turned his head slowly. "Then it begins," he said. Outside, alarms began to echo through the base, soft and low at first, then rising in volume as lights turned red. Massive hangar doors opened, revealing lines of black warships, sleek and angular, engines humming like a low growl from the deep. Crews ran across metal floors, preparing for launch, and holographic displays came alive with battle maps. The moon itself seemed to awaken from centuries of quiet. Far below, on Earth, ordinary people stopped whatever they were doing to watch the broadcast. The slap had reached every corner of the planet. Children in schools stared in confusion, while elders whispered old stories of when humans had been pushed to the edge before. Factories halted, trains stopped, cities froze. The air felt different, heavier, filled with a shared understanding. Humanity had been insulted before, but never on this scale. This wasn't about pride anymore, it was about dignity. A single soldier had stood for all of them, and now every human heart burned with the same silent fury. In the capital city, the Council of Earth gathered. Generals, diplomats, and leaders filled the great circular room. At the center of the table, the old Prime Marshal leaned forward, her silver hair reflecting the cold light. "The slap was seen by 37 trillion viewers," she said slowly. "Our allies are silent. Our enemies are celebrating. But none of them understand what they've done." She looked at the glowing screen that showed the alien commander's face frozen mid-laugh. "They think we'll send words," she continued, "but we will send silence." Meanwhile, the human soldier who had been slapped sat in a transport ship, heading away from the council planet. He stared out the window as stars streaked by. His face was calm, but his eyes held the reflection of fire. The small communication screen on his wrist blinked once, then opened to reveal the Prime Marshal's image. "You've done enough," she said softly. The galaxy needed a reminder. He nodded once. "They'll understand soon," he replied, his voice quiet, almost sad. "We never wanted this, but they left us no choice." The transmission ended, and he looked down at his hands, remembering the moment of impact. He hadn't felt pain. Only pity. Pity for what would come next. In the alien commander's homeworld, the reaction was chaotic. His people celebrated his victory, cheering in the streets, waving banners that mocked humans. Fireworks filled the sky. But behind the scenes, the military officers and government leaders were uneasy. Reports from border stations said human fleets were moving fast. Too fast. Some believed it was coincidence. Others whispered that the humans were preparing for war. The commander ignored the warnings, smiling for the cameras and declaring that the Deathworlders would never dare retaliate. His arrogance was endless, and it blinded him to what the rest of the galaxy was already beginning to feel. A shift in the air, a coming storm. In distant space, an ancient station floated in orbit around a red dwarf star. It had been abandoned for centuries, a relic from old wars. Tonight, its lights flickered on again. Inside, computers activated, scanning signals from across the galaxy. A single word appeared on the main console: retribution. Across hundreds of worlds, hidden human installations came online, long-buried satellites reactivated, and encrypted codes began bouncing between systems. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but humanity's entire military network had just awakened. News feeds exploded with debate. "Will humans strike back?" one alien anchor asked, her eyes glowing blue. "Surely they know this was just a personal insult." A historian from another planet shook his head. "You don't understand them," he said grimly. "They don't fight for ego. They fight for memory. And they never forget an insult." The words spread like wildfire. Everywhere, fear began to bloom. Some planets banned broadcasts of the slap, hoping to avoid angering the humans further. Others prepared for evacuation, remembering the stories of old Earth wars where entire fleets had vanished under human fire. Back on Earth's moon, Commander Riven stood before a massive window overlooking the dark side of the planet. He pressed his hand against the glass and whispered, "It's not revenge. It's balance." Behind him, the fleet control officers reported in. All Deathworlder divisions online. Mars Command ready. Titan Command ready. Deep Fleet ready for launch. He turned and gave the order no one had heard in centuries. Engage Directive Phoenix. The lights dimmed, and hundreds of ships began to rise from their docks, engines burning like blue fire. The stars trembled as humanity's armada came alive once more. Meanwhile, in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted as reports of human movement poured in. The alien commander's face turned pale. "It's not possible," he whispered. "They wouldn't dare." The council leader glared at him. "You slapped a Deathworlder," she said coldly. "You didn't insult one man. You insulted a world that survived extinction 5 times. You've reminded them who they are." He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. His claws trembled. Outside, through the vast council windows, streaks of light appeared across the night sky, ships entering orbit. Not alien ships. Human ones. Silent. Precise. Ready. In that moment, the galaxy realized what it had done. The slap that was meant to humiliate had become a signal of awakening. For centuries, humans had lived in peace, quiet, trying to be part of the council. But now, the silence was broken. The Deathworlders had risen, and this time, they would not speak, they would act. The galaxy entered a strange stillness. News channels stopped showing entertainment. Markets froze. Entire civilizations that once mocked humanity began watching the skies instead of their own reflections. The video of the slap had become the most viewed broadcast in galactic history. Every being who watched it remembered the moment when the human soldier simply touched his face, stayed silent, and walked away. That calmness haunted them. In the great cities of the core worlds, people whispered that humans had gone quiet before every war they had ever fought. It was a silence that always came before the storm. On the alien commander's homeworld, the mood began to change. At first, he was treated like a hero. Children carried banners of him, and statues were erected overnight to celebrate his bravery. But then came the rumors. Miners along the rim worlds had seen dark shapes moving through hyperspace, ships with no registration codes. Pilots reported hearing coded transmissions in old Terran dialects, and communication satellites were suddenly falling offline. By the third day, the Galactic trade network suffered blackouts that no one could explain. The commander dismissed it as technical interference. But deep down, he felt the same coldness that had filled the eyes of the human he had struck. At the same time, strange atmospheric shifts were detected across several systems near Earth. Scientists observed the oceans on Earth glowing faintly blue at night, as though the planet itself were waking up. Orbital stations reported seismic waves deep beneath the Pacific. Then came the first real signal. Earth's defense satellites powered up after decades of dormancy. Massive underwater gates, thought to be relics of the old wars, opened with thunderous pressure. Out of the mist rose black metal leviathans, warships as long as cities, moving silently. Through the ocean like shadows of doom. One by one, they lifted from the water and vanished into the sky. In the Galactic Council Hall, the delegates gathered in emergency session. The chamber, once bright with gold light, now felt like a tomb. "We are receiving multiple unregistered ship readings," said a trembling analyst, his screen flickering. "All of them. They're of Terran design." Panic spread like fire. One delegate stood up, shouting, "We must open communication channels. Offer them peace." Another replied sharply, "Peace? You insulted their soldier before the galaxy. They won't talk now, they'll remember." The council leader slammed her hand on the table. "Enough," she said. "We will reach Earth's leadership directly. Send a message now." But when the technicians tried, they found something terrifying. Earth's communication frequencies were active, but unresponsive. Every message they sent was received and ignored. On the alien commander's homeworld, the celebrations had stopped. Streets that once echoed with cheers were now empty. News reports confirmed that several patrol fleets stationed near human territories had gone missing. No distress calls. No debris. Just silence. The commander's advisors begged him to make a public apology, to ask forgiveness before it was too late. But his pride refused. "I will not kneel to Deathworlders," he shouted, slamming his clawed hand onto the table. "They are savages. They wouldn't dare strike us." Even as he said it, the lights in the room flickered. Power dropped for a moment, and a faint sound came from the communication screen. A voice, distorted and cold. "We warned you once," it said. "Now we remind you." Then the feed died. The commander froze, staring at the empty screen. Far across the galaxy, humanity's fleets moved in absolute silence. No warnings, no signals, no threats. They appeared over border worlds like ghosts. Alien satellites captured only brief flashes before going dark. One planet reported seeing a single ship appear in orbit, a massive, black vessel with no insignia. It fired once, releasing a burst of light that cut through the planet's defense grid without sound. Then it was gone. Survivors said the strike didn't even leave destruction behind. It simply erased things, like they had never existed. Fear spread faster than any fleet could travel. Whole colonies began evacuating. Merchants stopped trade. The galaxy, once united under arrogance, was now united in dread. Meanwhile, on the moon base, Commander Riven watched as fleets formed up across the solar system. He stood before a massive tactical display, showing hundreds of glowing dots, Earth's ships, all synchronized, all waiting. "The Omega fleet is ready," an officer said. "All Deathworlder divisions have reported in." Riven nodded, his face expressionless. "Then we proceed to Phase 2. He paused, then added, No unnecessary killing. They will understand through fear, not destruction. He turned toward the window, watching Earth glow below, the clouds swirling around it like armor. We show them what restraint looks like. The galaxy, however, did not see restraint. To them, the quiet advance of human fleets felt like the end of time. Reports came from the outer rim, entire planets surrounded by silent ships that didn't fire a single shot. When local governments tried to hail them, they received no answer. The ships just hovered, their presence alone freezing entire populations in terror. Some ships projected holograms into the sky, a single image of a handprint, glowing white, the mark of the soldier who had been slapped. Underneath it appeared 4 words, "We remember your touch." Back in the council hall, the delegates finally realized the truth. "They aren't invading," whispered one alien, trembling. "They are warning us." The council leader turned to the alien commander, her eyes cold. "You slapped a soldier in front of the galaxy," she said quietly. "You didn't just insult him. You insulted every human who ever bled for peace." The commander tried to speak, but no words came. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by shaking fear. Reports flooded in, his own home system now surrounded by unidentified vessels. The council guards turned toward him, unsure whether to protect him or step away. "What should we do?" one of them asked the leader. The leader whispered, "Pray." In orbit above the alien commander's world, the night sky filled with hundreds of faint, glowing lines. They moved slowly, gracefully, as if watching. The people below stood in the streets, staring upward in silence. Then one of the lines descended, a massive ship unlike any ever seen. Its hull shimmered with shifting metal, absorbing the starlight. On its side were words written in ancient Terran script, "United Earth Fleet, Resolution." For the first time in galactic history, the stars themselves seemed to bow before humanity. And deep inside that flagship, the same human soldier stood before the viewing window, his face calm, his expression unreadable. He watched the alien planet below and said softly, "We came for peace. They asked for pain. Now, we give them truth." The bridge around him fell silent. The galaxy had learned to fear many things, but never silence. Tonight, it would learn again. The alien commander's planet, once a place of light and laughter, had turned into a world of silence. The skies above were no longer filled with trade ships and luxury transports. They were now shadowed by enormous black vessels that blotted out the stars. From the ground, they looked like giant scars in the heavens, unmoving, silent, watching. Every being on the planet felt the same invisible pressure pressing down on their hearts, as if gravity itself had grown heavier. The people whispered prayers, children hid under tables, and soldiers stood frozen at their posts, staring at the ships that hung above their world like executioners waiting for the command. Inside his palace, the alien commander paced restlessly. The arrogance that once made his voice loud had drained away, leaving only fear and denial. His generals had gone silent. Some had fled, others refused his orders. Even his personal guards avoided eye contact, pretending to adjust their weapons just to keep their hands busy. The communication systems had been jammed for hours. No calls went out, no messages came in. Every attempt to reach the Galactic Council failed. Finally, the commander slammed his claws against the console and shouted, "Send out fighters. Drive them away." But his second-in-command, an older soldier with deep scars across his face, didn't move. "Sir," he said quietly, "our fleet is gone." The commander froze. "Gone?" he demanded. "What do you mean gone?" The old soldier's voice trembled as he answered, "The human fleet surrounded them 3 hours ago. There were no explosions, no wreckage. They just vanished." The commander stumbled backward, falling into his chair. His claws dug into the armrest as his breathing quickened. "That's impossible," he whispered. "No one can destroy ships without leaving a trace." But the truth was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. The Deathworlders were not fighting wars, they were erasing them. Reports flooded in from nearby systems. A mining colony had vanished overnight, leaving only the empty shell of its moon behind. A communication hub near the Orion line was silent, its signal replaced by a single heartbeat-like pulse that repeated every few seconds. And every time the pulse echoed, a message appeared on every connected screen, written in simple, calm words, "We see you." Meanwhile, inside the Galactic Council chamber, chaos ruled. Delegates screamed over one another, demanding answers that no one had. The council leader stood tall in the center, her voice sharp and steady. "Enough. This is not a war, it's a reckoning," she declared. "The humans are not attacking randomly. Every system they've surrounded is one that laughed during that broadcast." The realization sent chills through the room. One alien representative turned pale and whispered, "Then we're next." The leader looked toward the massive holographic map showing the spread of human presence across the galaxy. "They're not conquering," she said, voice soft now. "They're reminding us." Back on the commander's planet, panic broke out. Cities went dark as power plants failed. Civilians fled underground, believing it would keep them safe. The commander finally gave the order to surrender, though his pride made the words choke in his throat. "Send a transmission to Earth," he ordered. His aides rushed to activate the comms, but the signal was immediately intercepted. The screens flickered, and then a face appeared, the human soldier. His calm eyes filled the entire room. No emotion, no anger, just a cold, unwavering stare. The commander's body froze, his breath shallow. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the soldier said, "You wanted the galaxy to see what happens when you strike a Deathworlder. Now they will." His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle, but it carried more weight than any weapon. The commander tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "We didn't mean," he began, but the soldier interrupted. "You meant every word, every laugh, every insult. You thought silence meant weakness. It meant patience." Outside the palace, the skies changed color. The black ships adjusted formation, spreading in perfect synchrony. Their engines glowed faintly blue, but they made no sound. Then, from the horizon, a low hum began to build, not from the ships, but from the ground itself. The vibration shook the glass windows. Citizens clutched their heads as the hum grew louder, deeper, until it became a single, perfect note that filled the atmosphere. It wasn't an attack, it was a warning. Across the galaxy, every planet connected to the council felt it too. The sound traveled faster than any signal, echoing across the stars. The message was clear. The humans had spoken, not through words, but through the language of fear. Inside the council hall, the delegates stood frozen as the vibration shook their chamber. "They're broadcasting something," an analyst cried out, covering his ears. "But it's not communication, it's resonance. They're syncing every world to their frequency." "Why?" another shouted. The council leader's eyes widened as she realized the meaning. "To show us unity," she said softly. "To show that they can reach us all, at once." Her voice dropped lower. "They've become what we always feared, a single mind with one purpose." Back on the alien world, the commander fell to his knees. "Please," he whispered to the screen, "call them off." But the human soldier did not move. Behind him, through the glass of his command deck, hundreds of other human officers stood in silent formation. The commander could barely breathe. Then the soldier spoke again, his tone softer now, almost regretful. "You were given peace," he said. "You mistook it for permission." With that, the transmission ended. A blinding light filled the alien skies. For a few moments, everyone thought it was the end. But when the light faded, nothing was destroyed. Instead, every ship slowly turned and began to rise away from the planet, leaving behind no damage, no deaths, only a deep, terrifying silence. The commander looked up, tears running down his scaled face. The message was clear. The humans didn't need to kill to win. They needed only to remind the galaxy who they were. Across thousands of systems, alien citizens fell to their knees, not from orders, but from awe. The galaxy, once arrogant and proud, now trembled in quiet respect. For the first time in centuries, every being understood the truth whispered by old legends. You can mock a Deathworlder once, but never twice. Humanity had not spoken in rage. They had answered with silence. And that silence was louder than any scream the galaxy had ever known. The galaxy slept uneasily that night. Billions stared into the sky, afraid to blink, fearing that the next time they opened their eyes, the black ships would be above their world. Every spaceport, every outpost, every station remained on alert, waiting for humanity's next move. But none came. The humans said nothing. Their fleets hovered over key planets and then drifted away into the darkness without firing a single shot. To some, it felt like mercy. To others, it was a warning carved into their souls. The fear wasn't from destruction. It was from uncertainty. Nobody knew when, or if, the humans would speak again. On the alien commander's homeworld, the silence was unbearable. Days passed without a single transmission. The skies, once filled with the hum of commerce ships, now echoed with emptiness. The great city towers stood dark, their lights dimmed by rationed power. Every screen that once displayed entertainment or propaganda now showed a frozen image. The human soldier's face staring straight ahead, unmoving, silent, with words underneath, never again. The alien commander had barricaded himself in his fortress, pacing day and night, haunted by that image. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His advisors whispered among themselves, afraid to even approach him. His body was trembling, his claws tapping nervously against the table. The echo of his own heartbeat filled the room like thunder. Every shadow felt like it was watching him. Finally, unable to bear the silence, he ordered his aides to open communication lines with the Galactic Council. "We must do something," he shouted. "They are watching us like predators, waiting for the right moment." His aides tried to respond, but before they could speak, the room lights flickered. The screens on the wall began to flash. A coded signal had overridden the council's frequency. It was a human transmission. Everyone in the room froze. The screen cleared, and the human soldier appeared again, his calm expression unchanged. The commander tried to speak, but his voice broke. "Please," he stammered. We were wrong. It was a mistake." The soldier tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing. "A mistake watched by the galaxy," he said quietly. "Do you know how many worlds laughed with you?" The commander couldn't answer. The human continued, "We forgave once. We do not forgive twice." The broadcast spread across the galaxy instantly. Every council planet received it at the same time, the same voice, the same face. It wasn't just a message to the commander. It was a message to all. The human's voice was calm, without anger, but it carried a weight that crushed every heart that heard it. "For centuries," he said, "we built bridges. We sought peace. We were mocked for our past, called beasts for our strength. But peace is not weakness. You mistook patience for fear. And now, you see what silence truly means." The alien populations who heard the words trembled. Some wept. Others shut down their networks in panic, hoping to hide from whatever judgment was coming. But the humans didn't attack. The ships never fired a single shot. They simply remained visible, reminding the galaxy that they were always there. In the council chamber, delegates sat pale and speechless. The council leader, exhausted and afraid, finally broke the silence. "They could destroy us all," she said, her voice trembling. "But they won't. That's worse." Her assistant turned to her, confused. "Worse?" The leader nodded slowly. "Because they're not trying to end us. They're teaching us. They want us to live with what we've done." Around her, every representative hung their head. The arrogance that had filled those chambers for generations was gone. The laughter that once mocked humanity was now replaced by guilt and fear. Back on Earth's moon, Commander Riven stood before the great window overlooking the planet. His fleet reports glowed across holographic screens behind him. "All units have reached position," an officer said softly. "Do we proceed to Phase 3? Riven shook his head. "No. They've seen enough." He turned toward his crew. "Transmit the final message." The officer hesitated. "Are you sure, sir?" Riven looked out into the stars, where countless alien worlds shimmered faintly in the distance. Yes, he said quietly. Let them remember. Not in ashes, but in silence. Moments later, every alien ship, station, and planet received the transmission. The same human voice, the same calm tone, carried across every frequency. We will not destroy you, it said. We will not enslave you. We will not take what is yours. But you will remember this. You will tell your children what happens when you strike a Deathworlder. You will teach them that respect is earned, not demanded. Then the message ended. The screens went dark. The fleets turned and began to vanish one by one, slipping into hyperspace until only the stars remained. On the alien commander's planet, the skies cleared. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. People ran into the streets, weeping in relief. But the commander did not join them. He stood alone in his chamber, staring at the empty sky through the window. His body shook as he whispered, "They didn't kill us. Why didn't they kill us?" His advisor, pale and shaking, whispered, "Because they don't need to." The commander sank to his knees, realizing the truth. The humans had taken everything from him, his pride, his image, his power, and they hadn't needed to fire a single shot. His name, once shouted in victory, would now be remembered only in shame. Across the galaxy, schools began rewriting history. Statues of the alien commander were torn down. The image of the slap was banned in dozens of systems, labeled as a moment of galactic disgrace. And yet, the humans said nothing more. They didn't celebrate. They didn't boast. They simply returned to their worlds, rebuilt their stations, and went back to silence. But everyone knew that silence now had meaning. It was the silence of power held in restraint. In the deep of space, the human soldier stood once more before the viewing glass of his flagship. He watched the stars drift by, the reflection of his face faint in the window. "They've learned," he said softly. Behind him, Commander Riven approached. "Perhaps," Riven replied, "but they will forget in time. They always do." The soldier's gaze hardened. "Then we will remind them again." The ship continued its course into the darkness, its engines a quiet hum that echoed like a heartbeat through the void. Humanity had spoken not with fire, not with fury, but with silence. And that silence, once more, would echo across the galaxy for generations, reminding every world that peace is not the absence of strength, but the choice to hold it back. The following weeks became the quietest the galaxy had ever known. There were no new trade convoys, no political broadcasts, no laughter in the space markets. Every species, every planet, existed in uneasy stillness, haunted by the memory of what they had seen. The stars themselves felt heavier. The hum of engines, once a symbol of progress, now sounded like a reminder of guilt. Even the Galactic Council chamber, once full of noise, debate, and arrogance, sat empty most of the time. The seats where delegates once mocked and argued were abandoned, the great lights dimmed. Only a few guards remained, standing in silence as if afraid to speak too loudly, as if the humans might still be listening. Far away, in the dark reaches of space, the human fleets drifted silently between the stars. They had not returned home, nor had they advanced. They lingered like shadows, silent and watchful. To the galaxy, it felt like punishment, a quiet reminder that humanity was everywhere and nowhere at once. Entire sectors reported fleeting contacts, a radar blip here, a passing shadow there, a whisper of communication on an ancient Terran frequency. But whenever they tried to respond, there was nothing. The humans never replied. Their silence had become a language, and every alien civilization had learned to read it. On the alien commander's planet, the days blurred together in shame and sleeplessness. The once proud general was a ghost of himself. He could no longer eat, his claws trembled, his eyes had lost their fierce glow. The world he had once ruled now despised him. The very people who had cheered his name now spat at the ground when they saw his face. Murals of him were burned, and his statues shattered in public squares. "You brought this upon us," they shouted. "You made the Deathworlders remember us." He hid in his palace, pacing in circles, whispering to himself. I only wanted to show strength, he muttered again and again. I didn't know. I didn't know what they were. But some part of him did know. Deep in his heart, even when he had raised his hand to strike that human, he had felt something cold and powerful staring back at him. It wasn't the stare of prey. It was the gaze of a predator that chose not to bite. And now, he finally understood what that look had meant. It was the look of restraint. The kind of restraint that comes from absolute power. Across the galaxy, the story spread like wildfire. Every academy, every broadcast, every gathering whispered the same tale. The slap that silenced the stars. It was told in every tongue, with every possible variation. But the ending was always the same. The human never struck back. And yet, the galaxy never dared to breathe again. Children of alien races were taught that story before they learned their own history. Teachers would say, "This is why you never insult a Deathworlder. This is why you never mistake calm for weakness." The lesson became legend. In the Galactic Council, the leader finally gathered what remained of the representatives. Her face looked older, her eyes sunken from sleepless nights. "We have lived in fear long enough," she said, her voice trembling. "It is time we reach out. Not as rulers, not as superiors, but as equals." No one argued. For the first time in history, the council voted unanimously. Every species agreed to send an apology. It was an act the galaxy had never done before. The message was written carefully, reviewed by every delegate. It was humble, raw, almost human in its simplicity. To the people of Earth, it began, "We watched in arrogance, and we judged what we did not understand. We mistook your silence for submission. We humiliated one of your own, and through him, we humiliated all of you. We ask not for mercy, but for the chance to learn. We will remember the restraint you showed when we offered you only hatred." The message was broadcast through every known frequency, sent in 1,000 languages, and transmitted toward Earth and its colonies. Days passed. Then weeks. The galaxy waited for an answer. None came. Not a word. Not even a signal. Some began to fear that humanity had chosen permanent silence. Others believed the humans were simply watching, deciding if the apology was sincere. The suspense grew unbearable. On the alien commander's world, the people lived in prayer. Every night, they stared at the stars, whispering pleas for forgiveness to the black sky. Even the commander himself joined them, stepping out of his palace for the first time in months, falling to his knees under the open sky. "If they are listening," he said softly, "tell them I am sorry." His voice cracked. "Tell them I was blind." Then, one night, something happened. Across the galaxy, at exactly the same time, the stars blinked once. It was so subtle that most wouldn't have noticed, but scientists did. It wasn't random. It was coordinated. Moments later, every screen, every radio, every communication channel came alive with a single image, the human flag. No words, no threats, no commands. Just the emblem of Earth, a white circle with a blue flame burning at its center. Beneath it, one line appeared, "We heard you." The signal lasted only a few seconds before vanishing into static, but it was enough. The galaxy erupted in tears and relief. Some fell to their knees, others cheered, others wept silently. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. The humans had listened. That alone meant hope. The council declared the day a universal remembrance, naming it the Day of Silence. Back on Earth's moon base, Commander Riven stood watching the transmission end. The human soldier, the same man who had once been slapped, stood beside him, looking out at the endless void. "They finally understand," Riven said quietly. The soldier didn't reply. His eyes stayed fixed on the stars. "Do you think they'll ever forget?" Riven asked. The soldier turned his head slightly, his voice calm as ever. "They will," he said. "And when they do, we'll be here to remind them." He turned back toward the darkness, where the stars shimmered faintly in the distance, and for a moment, his reflection glowed against the glass, a reminder of the silence that had once made the whole galaxy tremble. And somewhere far beyond, in the quiet reaches of space, A whisper traveled between the stars. A quiet human voice carried by the radio winds. Respect is earned and remembered. It was not a threat, nor a promise. It was a truth that would echo forever years past, and the memory of that single slap became more than a story. It became a warning carved into the bones of history. The galaxy had changed. The arrogance that once filled the council halls was gone. Worlds that had laughed at humanity now built shrines to peace, and schools taught about restraint as the highest form of strength. Yet even as time passed, no one ever forgot the silence that followed that slap, the silence that had humbled empires. The day humanity stopped speaking had become the moment the galaxy learned to listen. On Earth, the mood was different. The great cities had rebuilt their trade, the colonies on Mars and Europa thrived again, and fleets once feared as ghosts were now docked and silent, guarded not by soldiers but by historians. Humanity had proven its power but chose not to rule. They didn't demand tribute or obedience. They only asked for respect, and in doing so, they earned something far greater than fear. They earned reverence. Across alien worlds, people now celebrated the Day of Silence, lighting candles and whispering words of peace. But for humans, it was not a day of victory. It was a day of remembrance. The soldier who had once been slapped returned to Earth. No parades awaited him. No grand titles, no medals. The world knew his face, yet he walked through the streets as a nameless man, living quietly by the sea. Every evening, he would stand by the shore and watch the waves crash against the rocks, thinking of the galaxy beyond those stars. He didn't feel pride for what humanity had done. He felt sorrow for what it took to remind the universe of who they were. To him, the silence that followed that moment was not triumph, it was tragedy. One night, as the wind howled and the sea shimmered under the moon, a soft sound broke the stillness, a ship descending through the clouds. The old man looked up, shielding his eyes from the light. The vessel was not human. It was silver, small, and graceful, with markings from a distant world. When it landed, a single figure stepped out, an alien dressed in plain white robes. Her face was familiar to the galaxy, the current leader of the Galactic Council. She approached him slowly, her hands trembling, and bowed deeply. "I had to see you," she said softly. "The galaxy owes you everything." The human didn't answer right away. He just looked at her with tired eyes, the same calmness that had once frozen the stars. "You don't owe me," he said quietly. "You owe yourselves. I was only the mirror that showed you what you had become." The alien leader's voice quivered. "Still, you saved us. You could have destroyed us all, and you didn't." He turned toward the ocean again, his gaze distant. "We didn't save you. We gave you time to think." She hesitated before asking the question that haunted every world: will humanity ever speak to us again? He didn't look at her. "Maybe," he said after a long pause, "when you no longer need us to remind you who you are." His words hung in the air like the tide, calm but deep, carrying more weight than any weapon. The alien bowed her head and whispered, "Then may we never forget." She left him there by the sea, and her ship rose into the sky, disappearing into the night. As the years turned to decades, the galaxy flourished under the memory of that silence. Wars between alien races decreased. The Council transformed into a union of cooperation rather than control. And in the archives of every major world, one recording was preserved: the moment the alien commander struck the human soldier, followed by that unbroken, piercing silence. It was shown to every child as part of their education, with the same message engraved underneath: respect is strength. Arrogance is extinction. The human fleets still patrolled the stars quietly, not as conquerors, but as watchers, protectors who spoke only when absolutely necessary. On the alien commander's homeworld, centuries later, nothing remained of his palace. It had been turned into a monument called the Hall of Reflection. Inside, a single statue stood in the center, a figure of a human soldier, calm, standing tall, his hands by his sides, eyes fixed forward. Around the base of the statue were words written in dozens of languages: "He was struck once. The galaxy never struck again." Visitors came from every corner of the universe to stand before it, not to worship, but to understand. Some left in tears. Others stood in silence, feeling the weight of what restraint could mean. Back on Earth, the ocean waves still crashed against the same shore. The old soldier was gone, his home empty except for a single metal wrist device resting on a wooden table, the same one he had pressed the day of the slap. It blinked once every few minutes, as though still alive, waiting for a command that would never come. A small plaque sat beside it, engraved with the words, "Silence is not surrender, it is the calm before wisdom." Above Earth, the stars glittered in quiet harmony. The humans had retreated from the center of the galaxy, choosing peace over dominance. Yet everyone knew they were still there, somewhere beyond the dark, watching. Not as enemies, not as overlords, but as guardians of balance. They had no need for words, no hunger for glory. Their legacy was not in conquest but in restraint. And so the story of the Deathworlder's slap became the galaxy's greatest legend. A story told by every civilization to remind them that true power is not in striking back, but in knowing when not to. For in the end, it was not the humans' weapons that terrified the stars. It was their silence. A silence that echoed across eternity, a silence that taught the galaxy to respect what it once feared, and a silence that reminded all who heard it that sometimes the quietest voice leaves the loudest mark on history.